Welcome to Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Beth Calvert, and I hope you are well this fine September day. Our minister, Reverend Tiffany Sapp, gets a well-earned day of rest today. She'll be back with us next week. When we think of our local Unitarian Universalist Church nestled in the woods of East Tennessee, it's easy to feel like we're kind of way out in deep space, alone and rather unattached to any larger mothership. And true, mostly the mothership is invisible. But it exists, big and bold. So every year, we send 2 or 3 delegates from our church to connect, to participate, to observe, to be part of the intense, lively, idealistic convention that all Unitarian Universalists across the globe call GA. That's the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Delegates bring news from all wings of our denomination, and we add our voices to the mix. What issues and concerns do we share or need to recognize? What is the wider church studying, voting on, listening to, and yes, singing about? 3 of our members, Ann Johnson, Charlie Miller, and Greg Kramer, were our representatives to virtual GA this summer. They have many fascinating stories and anecdotes to offer. So, thanks to each of them and to you for joining us today to learn more about what our denomination is up to on a broader canvas. After our chalice lighting, our prelude will be We Are, a lovely song by Isaiah Barnwell with lead singing by our own Kim Ray and the HVUUC Choir. This song was also sung at the Sunday service in GA. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. Your daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. You're lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. You're makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time. Your daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. You're lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. You're makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit a morning star rises and sings to the universe we are one.
We'll sing Loving Kindness next. Please hold a light in your heart to dispel the darkness, to honor someone or some event, or to lift up a memory.
Hi, I'm Charles Miller, and I'd like to share a few of my experiences this year at General Assembly. I attended multiple workshops and lectures, and what follows is a summary of the most impactful for me. A featured speaker, Reggie Jackson, presented Milwaukee, a case study in the hidden impact of segregation. He described redlining, which is a practice of the early 20th century to outline areas with sizable black populations in red ink on maps to indicate high risk to mortgage lenders. The FHA refused to insure mortgages in redline neighborhoods. Mr. Jackson traced the geographical distribution of residents by race through to the 2010 census. Quantitatively, Milwaukee is the most segregated city in the U.S., and distributions are little changed since the time of redlining. He presented some reasons why, even after the policies are dismantled, the challenges persist, why those historically black neighborhoods remain underdeveloped, and some efforts and strategies to provide greater opportunity for families in these neighborhoods to disperse to other areas of the city. Mr. Jackson has a TEDx talk online that I highly recommend. Being that I have delivered a soapbox speech on current threats to the separation of church and state, I was pleased to hear a seminar recommending that liberals and progressives embrace some of the tactics conservatives have successfully used in the courts to challenge laws or government policies, specifically on grounds of religious freedom. Reverend Mark Caggiano was a lawyer in the Boston area prior to his ministry, and he provided examples where one could be granted exceptions to the law in cases where it violates your right to practice your religion. You may recall when businesses challenged the Affordable Care Act if they were compelled to provide birth control coverage. Imagine a response to laws in the Southwest, for example, banning anyone from leaving water bottles in the desert for immigrants. A UU member could argue they must be exempted from this law as a religious practice compels them to value all human life. There are many examples where litigation can supplement legislative action by maintaining the freedom to practice being UU. One workshop introduced a novel concept to me, titled Call to Prison Abolition, Indigenous Justice. I thought, they can't mean actually abolishing prisons. I've certainly thought a lot about destroying the prison pipeline that leads to mass incarceration, but never considered actually removing the prisons altogether. The speakers introduced stories of how Native Americans practiced justice prior to colonization and the introduction of prisons, as well as video interviews for modern examples. It centers on restorative versus retributive justice. How do we heal the injured and the injurer to reduce crime? They claimed our current system just inflicts more injury to both parties. Even if we don't abolish prisons, we could probably benefit from including more restoration in the process. I participated in a couple interactive workshops with breakout sessions. I got to hear and share experiences with other members. One such interaction that was particularly instructive was on the topic of classism and how it can emerge in congregational life unintentionally. I was grouped with other current or past stewardship trustees, and we discussed how to raise funds in an inclusive way. Overall, there were many powerful talks and interactions. However, you will notice that each of the topics I shared has something of a political tone. For me, the conference did have a feel more akin to a political convention than a religious experience. Perhaps that's a symptom of being virtual, and it may be due to my selection of events to attend. When I think of, quote, liberal religious community, I think classically of liberty of all to engage. So I learned at GA, our national community is very liberal in the left-right sense of the word. That said, GA offered an opportunity to learn about a wide variety of topics, hear different perspectives, and connect within an inclusive environment. Thank you for providing me the experience, and I hope this summary provides some insight to the event.
Good morning. I'm Ann Johnson, and the very first thing I'd like to do is thank you for the wonderful opportunity to attend General Assembly this year. Even though it was virtual, it was amazing to see how much was included for our learning and contemplation. It filled me up and made me appreciate this unique, liberal, religious community that is UU. I'd like to tell you about the Statement of Conscience that was approved this year, and then I'll briefly touch on the work being done on Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. The Statement of Conscience approved this year is entitled Undoing Systemic White Supremacy, a Call to Prophetic Action. Any statement of conscience is the result of congregation study/action issues, or CSAIs, which are social justice issues selected by UU member congregations for 4 years of study, reflection, and action. Then the UUA develops a statement of conscience from the CSAIs and feedback from congregations. The statement of conscience that was approved this year was originally proposed in 2020 and was not approved. I'm going to read the first paragraph of this year's approved version, and then I'll list the bullets under it. Seeking universal justice and equity, we call upon the Unitarian Universalist Association and Unitarian Universalist individuals and congregations and groups to actively engage in undoing systemic white supremacy in all of its manifestations. Systemic white supremacy refers to the embedded, institutional, and pervasive nature of racism, white privilege, and racial bias and oppression in our society. We acknowledge the impact of systemic white supremacy is intersectional, meaning it impacts people differently across race, income, class, gender, age, ethnicity, immigration status, and sexual orientation, religion, disability, and more. As Unitarian Universalists, we decry the ways in which the intersectional impact of systemic white supremacy divides our human family by privileging some groups over others and thereby generating resistance to the common goal of universal equity and justice. Systemic white supremacy is a direct affront to every one of our principles. Most egregious, we are losing lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color all across this nation, from long-standing ills of political violence to hate crimes to emerging crisis of the pandemic, due to the evil of systemic white supremacy. Therefore, as Unitarian Universalists, we must engage in urgent action to confront the moral crisis of our time. The bullet points that follow: 1, engage with movement in our communities and nation to heal the evils of racism. Carry forward the recommended healing actions conveyed in widening the circle of concern. build relationships across boundaries of privilege and oppression, and fulfill our UU role as a spiritual anchor to BIPOC UUs. Each of these bullet points include an explanatory paragraph, and I've provided links to both the full statement of conscience and to Widening the Circle of Concern in the order of service under this video. So this gives our congregation and our Social Justice Committee suggestions and goals for which to reach. As for Article 2 of the UU bylaws is entitled Principles and Purposes, and it's the foundation of all our work of our UUA and its member congregations and communities. It was last revised in 1987. The UUA established the Article 2 Study Commission in March of this year, and its proposed changes must be submitted by January of 2020. It's hoped that the revised article will be placed on the agenda for the 2022 GA. There's a big movement to add an Article 8. Some of you may have heard of this. Some congregations have already adopted it. Here's an example of the proposed wording of Article 8. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So to sum it up, systemic white supremacy was a major theme of the UUA General Assembly this year and in past years, as it should be. I urge you to open the links below to see some social justice actions we can take as a UU congregation. And thank you once again for the opportunity to attend GA this year. Have a great day.
Good morning. I'm Greg Kramer. It was my pleasure to go to this year's Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. I'm going to report on the Sunday morning sermon. The Sunday morning service, music and other readings were extremely well done. I hope some of you watched this service when the church presented it on June 27th. If you hadn't, you can look back at our past services on our website, or you can go to the UUA.org website and watch it there. Reverend Karen Hutt started her sermon with a story, a play written by Douglas Turner Ward in 1967. In some ways, her sermon was a parable. And like most parables, it can be interpreted by people in many ways. So you're going to hear my interpretation of the story. The play opens with two Southern men discussing a phenomena that happened last night. The era of the story is not clear, but it was a time when most white people had cooks and cleaning and washing people taking care of most of the household chores in town. There were saying that the black people in the town had disappeared. And since this society was dependent upon the blacks doing the white people's chores, the whites were in sad shape. The whites cried for help, asking the black people to return. If they came back, the town promised not to extract any revenge. Then, after some time, the blacks did return. And Reverend Hunt asked, will things be any different? Or will the white act like nothing has changed and go back to their ways? Well, to me, this parable turned out to really be a history lesson. I'm like many of you. UUism is not my native religion, but a faith I took up after leaving another. So I'm unaware that in 1967, when Douglas Turner Ward wrote the play, blacks were leaving the UUA in droves. Why? Prior to 1960, when the Unitarians and Universalists had not yet joined together, both religions had been on the forefront of racial justice. In the 1960s, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, and blacks were being attacked by law enforcement for any acts of civil disobedience advocated by Martin Luther King. Many blacks were injured. But in 1965, James Reeb, a Unitarian minister, was killed. The Unitarian Association Board moved their meetings from Boston to Selma. How did the blacks react? I'm quoting the March-April 2000 U World Magazine article written by Warren R. Ross. Quote, "Clearly, our vaunted unity on the issue of race is not the whole story. Even Reeb's death did not evoke the same emotions from all UUs. In 1968, Hayward Henry, chair of the newly formed Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus, said, "We Unitarian Universalists like to keep saying, but we went to Selma with you. Why are you blacks rejecting us?" In Selma, a black man named Jimmy Jackson was killed, and at that time, you could count the number of Unitarians in Selma on your fingers. A few weeks later, a white man is killed. All the Unitarians ran to Selma. Racism, that's what it was. End of quote. Yes, a lot of UUs were racist. When only blacks were being attacked and no response. A white UU was killed, huge response. When the UUA promised $1 million over several years to the Black Affairs Council, fair share donations to the UUA dropped off to the point where the offer was rescinded, leading to the largest loss of black congregants the UUA had ever seen. In 2013, Black Lives Matter groups were being founded, and many UU churches started to take up the cause. The blacks started returning to the UUA, as exemplified by the First Universalist Church of Minneapolis, who performed the Sunday service. Are we ready to change and support our black brethren, or are we going to act like nothing has changed?
It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together our vision widens and our strength is renewed. The postlude that closes our service is Fired Up by Holly Neer, performed by our HVUUC Choir in 2019. It touches on some of the issues that we do care about deeply. In closing, I offer warm thanks to our GA attendees, speakers, and Charlie and Greg. Your work and attention on behalf of all of us is deeply appreciated. And to each of you for joining us today, you too are appreciated. You are integral to this busy community and to this aching world that we share. Be well, do good work, keep wearing that mask, and listen up for a quick note from Reverend Tiffany about a very special service coming up soon.
Good morning, Holston Valley UU family. I am coming to you today from the grounds of our church with a very special announcement. Next Sunday, we will have the opportunity for an in-person outdoor water communion. I am so excited about this opportunity, and I hope you are too. To keep things safe and distanced, you must make a reservation. A blog post has just gone up under the news section of our website explaining how to make your reservation. I will tell you again, you must make a reservation to come to the in-person outdoor water communion. Go follow the instructions on the blog post. I will see you right here next week. See you soon.
Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Shame, shame. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Children need schools more than they need jails. That's where our society fails. First 7 years creates the child's foundation, mandatory for a healthy nation. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. How could we forget that the children come first? We left them alone and they died of thirst. Mothers and fathers confused and forlorn. When the children are missing, there's something wrong. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Can't just focus on the kids with wealth. Can't pick and choose who gets the health care. Takes an honest look at the great divide. Looks dangerously similar to genocide. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking my mother's heart. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step up. You're breaking another mother's heart.